Macy's apartment was on the ground floor of a townhouse near the university. It was minimally furnished. The walls were painted pale green. Against one wall was a black lacquered upright piano. A framed magazine article about Rudy Crew caught my eye. The educator's words were set in large type. Education is about the distribution of knowledge, and to whom we actually distribute this particular commodity is a major question in this country. Macy and I held each other and cuddled for a moment on the living room couch. I liked her touch, the way she kissed. This wasn't right, though. I knew that I didn't want to be here. Not tonight, anyway. Macy wasn't at her best right now. Good man's hard to find, Macy said, drawing me close. She was still slurring her words a bit. You have no idea. No idea. So hard out here. It's hell. I did have some idea about how hard it was to find someone to be with, but I didn't pursue the point. Maybe some other time. Macy, I'm going to head home, I finally said. I like seeing you again. I liked it a lot. I expected as much. I knew it. She exploded on me. Just go, Alex. Go. I don't want to fucking see you again. Before the anger had welled in her eyes, I had seen something beautiful and nearly irresistible. Now it was gone again. Maybe she could get back in touch with it. Maybe not. Then Macy started to cry, and I knew enough not to try and comfort her. I didn't want to be condescending. I just left the apartment, with its beautiful piano and the wonderful quote from Rudy Crew. This woman wasn't right for me to be with. Not now, anyway. Sad night. A good woman is hard to find, too, I wanted to tell Macy. God, I hated dating. Chapter 40. The night with Macy Francis kept bothering me for the next few days. It was like a sad song that played in my head. I hadn't expected it to turn out that way. I didn't like what I'd seen or felt. The look in Macy's eyes stayed with me. A terrible mixture of hurt, vulnerability, and anger that would be hard to soothe. I grabbed Sampson on Wednesday night after work. We agreed to meet at the Mark for drinks. The bar was a couple of streets down from Fifth, local hangout, tin ceiling, wide-board pine floors, long, worn mahogany bar, ceiling fan turning lazily. Sugar, damn, Sampson said when he arrived and found me sitting by myself, nursing a foggy-bottom lager while studying the old Pabst clock on the wall. You don't mind me saying, you look like shit, man. You sleeping all right? You're still sleeping alone, aren't you? Good to see you too, I said to him. Sit down and have a beer. Then Sampson wrapped one of his mammoth arms around me. He hugged me as if I were his little kid. What the hell is going on with you? He asked. I shook my head. Don't know exactly. The manhunt on the West Coast went real bad. I mean, it dried the hell up. There's no word on Betsy Cavalier's murder either. Had a date the other night. Just about had me swearing off dating for the rest of my life. Sampson nodded. I knew the words to that sad song. He ordered a bud from the bartender, an ex-cop we both knew, Tommy DeFeo. The case I was working on in California ended really badly, John. The killers just disappeared. Thin air. So, how are you doing? You look good. For you. He raised an index finger, then he pointed it right between my eyes. I always look good. It's a given. And don't try to change the subject on me. We're into something here. Oh, hell, you know I don't like to talk about my troubles, John. So tell me about yours. I started to laugh. He didn't. Sampson just looked at me, said nothing, waited me out. You'd probably make a decent shrink, I told him. Speaking of which, have you been to see the good doctor finally lately? Adele Finally is my psychiatrist. Sampson has also seen her a couple of times. She helps. Both of us agree on that. We're fans of Adele. Nah, she's really pissed off at me. Says I'm not trying hard enough. Says I won't embrace my own pain. Words to that effect. Sampson nodded and smiled thinly. So why is that? I made a face. I didn't say that I agree with Adele. I sipped my foggy bottom. It wasn't too bad, and I liked being loyal to a local brewer. When I try to embrace the goddamn pain, I keep coming back to the conflict between the job and the life I think I want to lead. I missed another one of Damon's concerts while I was out in California. Stuff like that keeps happening. Sampson punched my shoulder. Well, that's not the end of the world, you know. Damon knows you love his little ass. The young dude and I talk about it sometimes. He's over it. Now you get over it. Maybe it's just that I've worked on too many bad murder cases in the past few years. It's changing me. Sampson nodded approval. He liked that answer. Sounds like you're feeling a little burned out. No, I'm feeling like I'm caught in a scary nightmare that won't go away. Too many coincidences whirling around me. The mastermind howling my name, threatening me. I don't know how to make it all stop. Sampson stared into my eyes. He locked into them. Back there a little bit you said coincidences, sugar. You don't believe in coincidences. That's what makes it so scary. If you want to know the truth, I think that someone really is after me. And they've been after me for a long time. Whoever it is, he's scarier than the vampires. I keep getting calls from somebody, John. He calls me every day. Hardly misses a day. We can't trace the calls. Sampson ran a hand across his forehead. Now you're scaring me. Who would be stalking you? Who would dare to take on the Dragon Slayer? Must be some kind of fool. Believe me, I said, this is no fool. Chapter 41. Sampson and I stayed at the Mark later than we should have. We drank a lot of beer and finally closed the place down at around 2. We were smart and sane and sober enough to leave our cars in the parking lot instead of driving home. John and I walked home under a bright moonlit sky. It reminded me of the two of us growing up in Southeast. We had to walk just about everywhere we went. Maybe we'd take a city bus if we were feeling flush. He dropped me off at my house and continued toward the Navy Yard in his place. Early the next morning, I had to retrieve my car before I went to work. Nana was up with little Alex, and I drank a half pot of her coffee, then put the boy in his stroller. He and I walked to my car. The morning was clear and bright, and the neighborhood seemed peaceful and quiet at around 7 o'clock. Nice. I've lived on 5th Street for 30 years, ever since Nana moved there from her old place on New Jersey Avenue. I still love the neighborhood, and it is home for the Cross family. I don't know if I could ever leave. Daddy was with Uncle John last night. I bent down and talked to the boy as I pushed his blue and white striped stroller along. A nice-looking woman passed us on her way to work. She smiled at me like I was the best man in the history of the world because I was walking my child this early in the morning. I didn't believe it for a second, but I enjoyed the fantasy. Little Alex is very alert at 9 months, and he likes to watch passing people, cars, the clouds streaming above his little head. He loves rides in the stroller, and I like pushing him, talking or singing kitty ditties as we go about our business. See the wind blowing the tree leaves, I said, and he looked up as if he understood every word. It's impossible to tell how much he understands, but he seems responsive to what I say. Damon and Janny were the same way, though Janny was constantly babbling as an infant. She still loves to talk, and to get in the last word, and the next to the last, just like her grandmother. And also, now that I remember, her mother, Maria. I need your help, buddy. I stooped down and talked to little Alex again. He looked up at me, smiled beautifully. Sure, Daddy, you can count on me. It's your job to hold me together for a little while. You give me something precious to focus on. Can you do that? Alex continued to smile. Of course I can, Daddy. It's no problem. Consider it done. I am your precious. Lean on me. Good boy. I knew I could count on you. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're the best thing that's happened to me in a while. I love you, little buddy. As I was talking to my son, though, a little of the feelings of the night before rolled over me like some cold, wet fog coming up from the Anacostia River. Coincidences, I remembered. The bad things that had happened around me for the past 2 years. A real bad run. The murder of Betsy Cavalier. The mastermind. The vampire killers. I needed for it to let up some, needed to come up for air. When I got to headquarters that morning, a message was waiting for me. There had been another vampire murder. But the game had just changed, taken another turn. This one had taken place in Charleston, South Carolina. The killers were on the East Coast again. Part 3. Murder in the South. Chapter 42. I flew to Charleston and arrived a little before 10 in the morning. The local murder story was boldly splashed across the front pages of the Post and Courier, and also USA Today. I could feel uncertainty and fear in the bright, sterile, overly commercialized confines of the airport. Travelers I passed seemed nervous and wary. Several looked as if they hadn't slept well the night before. I'm sure that some of them felt that if the mysterious killers could strike in the heart of Charleston, they could do it in an airport waiting room or food court just as easily. No one was feeling safe anywhere. I rented a car at the Charleston airport, and then I set off for a spot called Colonial Lake in town. A male and female jogger had been murdered there at around 6 the previous morning. The couple had been married for just 4 months. The similarities to the murders in Golden Gate Park were unmistakable. I'd never been to Charleston, though I'd read books set in the city. I soon discovered for myself that Charleston is physically gorgeous. Once upon a time, it had been a city of incredible wealth, most of which came from cotton, rice, and slaves, of course. Rice had been the biggest export, but slaves, who were brought into Charleston port and sold throughout the South, were the import that proved the most profitable. Wealthy planters had traveled frequently between the plantations in the lowlands and their homes in Charleston, where the important balls, concerts, and masquerades were held. Relatives of Nana Mamas had been brought into Charleston port and sold there. I found a parking spot on Beaufin Street, which was lined with Victorian-style houses and was lovely. I even spied a few English gardens. This wasn't the kind of place where ghoulish murders ought to happen. It was too pretty, too idyllic. Was that what drew the killers here? Did they appreciate beauty? Or hate it? What were they revealing to us with each new murder? What was their dark fantasy, their horror story? If Charleston was suspicious and fearful about the murders, then the streets around Colonial Lake seemed close to terror. People eyed one another warily and coldly. There was nothing even close to a welcoming smile, no southern hospitality on display anywhere. I had left a message for Kyle to meet me at the lake. It was surrounded by wide sidewalks and wrought iron benches. Yesterday it had probably appeared picture-perfect and completely safe. Today, bright yellow crime scene tape was set up near the intersection of Beaufin and Rutledge. The Charleston police had surrounded the area and were watching everybody as if the killers might return. I finally saw Kyle waiting under a spreading shade tree, and I walked toward him. The morning was warm, but there was a breeze off the ocean that smelled of salt and fish. Kyle had on his usual attire, gray suit, white shirt, and nondescript blue tie. He looked like the playwright and actor Sam Shepard, even more so today than usual. Kyle looked gaunt, tired, almost as haunted as I felt. The murders were getting to him, too. Something was. It must have been like this yesterday morning, though it was earlier when they struck the couple, I said as I came up to Kyle. No one saw anything? No witnesses in an area like this? That's what I read in the police briefs. Kyle sighed. We actually have a witness who saw 2 men hurrying out of the park. Man in his mid-80s. He said he thought he saw blood on the shirts of the men, and he felt he was mistaken. Then he found the bodies. I quickly surveyed the scene at Colonial Lake again. The sun was shining brightly, and I was forced to shade my eyes. Birds were twittering in several of the trees. The park was so open to scrutiny. They were out in broad daylight. Some vampires, I muttered. Kyle eyed me. You're not starting to believe in vampires. I believe that there are people who practice a vampire lifestyle, I told him. I know some of them believe they're vampires. Even some of the role players sport very sharp teeth, fangs. They can be violent. I haven't seen any shape changes yet. Otherwise, our witness might have seen a couple of furry bats winging it out of here instead of 2 men. That's supposed to be funny, Kyle.